News Radio 700 WLW.
Rock, how far is too far for PC speak?
At some point, don't you got to call a spade, right? Call something what it is instead of constantly worrying about, is this offending someone or not? In this case, we're talking about, I guess there's a push for dropping the label of sex offender. Okay, I guess the Sex Offender Management Board, didn't know there was such a thing, has advocated for this. So let's see what the story is.
Let's get our guest on, deeply involved in the Crime Stoppers movement, Rania Mankarious. Always a pleasure. It's been a while.
Yes, thank you for having me.
So, Rania, what do you make of this? If in this situation we're talking about, say, I'm obviously a rapist. There's one guy who's quoted in this article we're talking about, referring me by a label for something that I did half my life ago is inappropriate and downright offensive. Well, my friend, you committed the crime, and at the very least, you should accept the fact that that's what you are.
Yeah, it's very frustrating, and we have to look at victims bear the label of being a victim and carry the weight of that assault with them for the rest of their lives, and they never wanted to be a part of this process. So it's very infuriating, and I think here's what it is. This country is on this very steep push to decriminalize crimes, to remove cash bail, to in misdemeanor and in felony cases dealing with the most aggressive and egregious felons. We're now looking at first-person language. We don't want to offend anybody, and we flipped the system so we're looking singularly at the defendant and not at all about the victim's experience or the community's experience. And so this is just another example of that. In Colorado, a sex offender term is too taxing for rapists to bear that name. So now they want to change it, and that's what they're going to do. It's really very infuriating. It will now be adults, quote, adults who commit sexual offenses, end quote.
Well, and we were just talking about this earlier with the situation in California where that flash mob of 80 people rolled up to the store and broke in. And yeah, it's like the victims, the people that own those stores, the people that pay for that retail up front to be able to sell to folks. No one mentions, their feelings at all, right? It's all about, well, we can't arrest any of these folks because, for this and that other reason. It's really offensive to the people that are victims of this.
It's horrific. And I mean, you cannot flip an entire system. Have there been things that we've needed to discuss in terms of police reform and criminal justice reform? Of course there have been, but we have broken the system in an effort to address those. And what we've done is we've destroyed communities. We've created chaos for everybody. And what will ultimately happen, although it won't be in the immediate future because of local politics is very, very extreme now in many major cities, although I'm very proud of the incoming New York mayor who's already promised to address some of the craziness. It's not going to self-correct in the near future, but it will eventually. And I fear that when it does, it's going to be worse than it was before because people are not going to live in situations where they can't go into a local grocery store or it has to be closed because the crime is crazy. A recent San Francisco Chronicle headline said, listen, maybe community members just need to deal with burglaries or barricade your homes better. Get over it. Well, that's absolutely absurd. It's absurd.
So what do you, Rock and I were talking earlier, Rania, that sooner or later the pendulum has to just swing the other way, and from the sound of things, it's going to swing really hard the other way.
Yes, but I do think it's going to take time. You have our current president himself saying we want to do away with the cash bail system. And listen, there's a lot of discrepancies in cash bail. We know that it holds the poor at different levels, that it holds the wealthy. But we also know that judges who sit at the bench or magistrates usually issue a bond based on a person's income. So it's not like a one-stop shop for all. It's supposed to be a fair system. What we really worry about is that we're not fixing anything. We're destroying one system, creating unbelievable chaos, and the result of all of this will be another system that is far more extreme than the one we were trying to fix.
But doesn't this come down to the people that live in these communities? Don't they bear the burden of this? Because they're the ones voting for these people that are outright saying that this is what they're going to do. They're going to, destigmatize crime and do all these sorts of things. So, and if they're voting for these folks, who else can they blame but themselves?
Well, people don't see this as a direct consequence to anything political, unfortunately. Public safety has become political, but the average person is going to say, oh, yeah, crime is up because of COVID. Well, that's not true. Family violence is up because of COVID. But the reason people are going into grocery stores and stealing is because they've decriminalized that type of activity. It's plain and simple, and the criminals know that. Unfortunately, people just don't understand. I'll tell you, even locally in Harris County, we're doing basic civics lessons just to get people to understand who the mayor is in terms of what he actually does, who the county judge is and what she does, and what the commissioners do versus the district attorney, what a judge is versus a magistrate, because people don't know. And it's sort of, we're sounding the alarm. We're really begging people to please pay attention. Pay attention in your local city, your local community. Understand your local politics. Know who to talk to, and in a respectful manner, of course, but bring your concerns before your city council, before your county commissioners, or however your city structure is, because people are very frustrated. They're getting more frustrated, but they're not sure what to do. We're leading in Houston with a model, and we welcome everybody to follow suit, because people are just absolutely fed up.
And don't you think, Rania and Rock, that a lot of people who ordinarily wouldn't be a criminal are now becoming criminals because they go, well, hell, John next door went and stole $500 worth of Louis Vuitton stuff. Nothing happened to him. Well, shoot, I'm just sitting over here and I got nothing, and nothing's going to happen, and nothing happened to him. He's sitting over there selling this stuff on the internet, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you're saying is at some point, doesn't even the most law-minded person ever go, I'm a fool here. I'm being made a fool here. I'm trying to do things the right way. What's that give me? Nothing.
Nothing's happening to that guy. Nothing's going to happen to me. Well, hell, I'll go steal $500 worth of stuff. Why not?
Yeah, well, that's what we're talking about, the risk versus reward scenario. There is no risk and there is a reward. You walk into Walgreens and take whatever you want. Okay, well, maybe people want to do that. And in California, you have Walgreens and other department stores or local grocers having to close. It's absolutely insane. So that risk versus reward is creating a scenario where the risk does not outweigh the reward, and people are committing crimes again. But most people are getting so fed up with it, and they are sounding the alarm. They're just not quite sure what to do, and that's why we're pleading with communities. Look at your local politicians, ask the appropriate person questions respectfully, and make public safety priority number one. You've got to, because we're losing this country. We're losing our major cities. We're losing our small towns to crime-ridden communities, and it's just not sustainable.
But from your area of expertise, I'm always fascinated with the psychology of this, because idealistically, the whole concept of, nonviolent people, they shouldn't have to do any time in prison. And there's always like a sympathy for these folks. That's the idealistic view of it. But in reality, when you've had your house broken into, and some of your possessions stolen, all of a sudden reality hits you square in the mouth. But what is it psychologically about people where they vote and act more on their feelings than like physical things that can actually harm them?
I think most people haven't been a victim of crime, and that whole group of people is sort of the, let's be soft on crime. How bad is it? Yes, your car was broken into, but you can fix that car. You have another way to go to the office. Most of those people haven't been victimized by crime. But think of the single parent who has one car that's reliant on that car to drive their kids to school and make it to the office and come back. When that car is broken into and is destroyed and she cannot repair it, it means she can lose her job. It means her kids don't go to school. It creates a major burden for her family. So yes, it's nonviolent. Great, it's nonviolent. But it destroys people's lives. It destroys people's livelihoods. And we've got to start thinking. We've got to bring the victims back into the scenario. We've just got to. We've forgotten about them completely. We're speaking from a position of, it hasn't happened to me. It's not that bad. It's not a big deal. You have a whole celebrity sector that has layers and layers and layers of personal security, so none of this stuff affects them, and so they're all for bailing everybody out, and they're all for criminal justice reform. What do they care? It has nothing to do with them. But the average person, the average citizen who's been impacted by crime, I'm telling you, they are singing a different tune. It's those that it hasn't touched that are much softer on crime.
So, Rania, do you see at this stage of the game that we are turning a corner at all, or do we have a long way to go?
I fear we have a little bit more to go. I really do, because COVID, well, the biggest disaster, of course, a global pandemic, was the greatest gift for those championing criminal justice reform, because they can hide so much under the COVID umbrella. But I do think enough people are becoming victimized, unfortunately, and it's those people that are not okay with it and that are digging in and saying, why did this happen? This doesn't have anything to do with COVID. And how did this happen? And wait a minute, you're telling me the guy that broke into my home, tied me and my children up, and stole everything, got out on jail, didn't pay a penny, got out on bond, didn't pay a penny. What's happened? And he had 4 other convictions prior to this. I mean, people are they're learning about the criminal justice system. They're getting fed up, and soon they will be speaking up. And I am afraid it's going to take some more time unless people stop and really start paying attention.
Rania, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.